At the core of this story is judgment based on appearances and the devastating price of prejudice. The story explores how snap decisions rooted in racial and class bias can unravel in public shame when truth is revealed. The central message is simple, yet powerful. Never judge a book by its cover, especially not when the book owns the library. This is a drama infused with social commentary, spotlighting the lingering issues of racism, classism, and unconscious bias. The narrative will unfold in a high-end restaurant, a symbol of status, control, and service hierarchy, where one man believes he is superior simply because he's wearing a bow tie, and the other is being overlooked because he's wearing sneakers. The genre is a mix of realistic drama and inspirational fiction with elements of poetic justice. There's no need for gunfights or high-speed chases here. The weapon is truth, and the battleground is dignity. The dominant emotion is regret, slowly building as the rude waiter's assumptions begin to collapse. There is also suspense, as the reader begins to sense that the man being insulted is someone important, but the reveal is saved for the right moment. In the background, we feel empathy, frustration, and ultimately triumph, as dignity and truth win in the most graceful and unexpected way. This is not just a story about two people. It's about the society we live in, the silent codes of discrimination that still exist in public spaces, and the silent strength of those who have learned to carry grace in the face of disrespect. An arrogant waiter in an upscale restaurant openly disrespects a quiet, casually dressed black man. What he doesn't know is that the man he's humiliating is not only a world-renowned philanthropist and millionaire entrepreneur, but also the anonymous owner of the restaurant itself. The truth, when it comes out, will not just cost the waiter his job, it will cost him his dignity. Character is measured not by how we treat the rich or powerful, but by how we treat those we assume can do nothing for us. This story is a wake-up call in narrative form, a moment where arrogance meets truth, and the fallout is both painful and unforgettable. The restaurant smelled like money. Polished marble floors reflected golden chandeliers, and the soft murmur of silverware against porcelain plates formed a rhythm of elegance. Waiters in pressed tuxedos floated past white tablecloths like shadows, trained to smile without sincerity. The atmosphere was quiet, exclusive, the kind of place where reservations were made weeks in advance, and the price of silence was built into the bill. And then he walked in. Black hoodie, faded jeans, scuffed sneakers. No watch, no visible wealth, just confidence, unapologetic, effortless confidence. He didn't pause at the front desk. He didn't look around nervously like someone lost or unsure. He walked straight in, his head high, his hands relaxed in his pockets. That alone was enough to raise eyebrows. The hostess blinked. The maitre d' leaned forward in his seat. A couple at table 3 paused mid-sip of their $300 Cabernet. And Daniel, the waiter with the highest customer ratings, the one who always got tipped the most, snorted. "Can I help you?" Daniel said, stepping forward, tone sharp like broken glass. The man turned toward him, calm, unbothered. "Yeah, table for one." Daniel looked him up and down like he was scanning trash on a runway. "Reservations only, sir." "I know," the man said. "Name's Marcus." Daniel raised a single eyebrow, mockingly dramatic. "Marcus, what?" "Just Marcus." Daniel gave a smile that wasn't a smile at all. "Sorry, sir, but we're fully booked. Perhaps try the diner across the street. You might fit in better there." From behind the bar, a busboy glanced up, uncomfortable. Marcus didn't flinch. "Are you sure? Maybe check again." "I don't need to check," Daniel replied quickly. "I can tell who belongs here. And who doesn't." Silence. Thick. Tense. Ugly. Marcus looked past Daniel, toward the dining room. His eyes stopped at a corner booth. "That one looks empty." Daniel's voice dropped, low and sharp. "That's a VIP table." A pause. Then Marcus smiled, the kind of smile that says you have no idea who you're talking to. "Perfect," he said. "That's the one I reserved." Daniel laughed. It was short and cruel. "Sir, I've worked here 5 years. That table's reserved for owners, investors, and celebrities. Unless you're hiding Jay-Z in that hoodie, you're not sitting there." Another moment passed. The other guests were now pretending not to stare. The restaurant was too quiet. Marcus sighed, then slowly reached into his pocket. He pulled out a sleek black leather wallet and removed a card. It was matte gold, heavy, embossed with a name, no last name. Just Marcus in bold letters. Underneath, in fine print, founder, investor, executive partner. He placed it gently on the host's stand. Daniel froze. A heartbeat. Then another. He picked up the card, eyes scanning it, and the blood drained from his face. Marcus leaned in slightly, his voice still soft, but now carrying weight. I like to walk in sometimes. No fanfare. No entourage. Just to see how my staff behaves when they think no one's watching. Daniel's lips parted, but no words came out. Marcus continued. And I have to say what I saw today? I didn't like it. A waiter near the wine rack dropped a glass. The maitre d' stood up, suddenly alert. Daniel stammered. I'm sorry, sir. I didn't realize. I know, Marcus said calmly. That's the problem. He turned to the hostess. I'll take the VIP booth. And I'd like a menu. She nodded, almost trembling. Marcus walked past Daniel, who was now sweating under the soft, golden lights. The room watched in stunned silence. He slid into the booth like he'd sat there 100 times before. Because he had. Daniel remained frozen by the host's stand, still holding the card like it might explode. And across the room, someone whispered, That's Marcus Kingsley. He owns half the block. Daniel's face turned a shade paler. Too late. The man he insulted wasn't a nobody. He was the man who signed the paychecks. His name was Marcus Kingsley, 42 years old, soft-spoken, sharp-eyed, a man who carried his presence like a secret, never loud, never showy, but undeniable. He didn't wear wealth. He didn't flaunt titles. He didn't need to. His silence spoke louder than most people's resumes. Born and raised on the south side of Chicago, Marcus grew up in a neighborhood where broken streetlights outnumbered working ones, where sirens sang lullabies at night, and where hope sometimes felt like a myth whispered between closed doors. His mother worked 2 jobs. His father was a mechanic who could barely read, but could take apart an engine blindfolded. Life was loud, fast, and hard. But Marcus? He was quiet. Not shy, just observing. Even as a child, he noticed things others missed. He noticed how teachers treated kids differently based on the shoes they wore. He noticed how cashiers smiled wider for light skin. He noticed how security guards at the local grocery store always followed the kids that looked like him. He noticed everything, and he never forgot. He wasn't the smartest kid in class, but he was the most focused. While others daydreamed, he calculated. While they played video games, he read books about finance, leadership, psychology. He became obsessed with understanding people. What moved them? What scared them? What made them open their wallets? What made them shut their hearts? By 16, he had a hustle, fixing up broken laptops from the school junk pile and selling them online. By 19, he was flipping cars. By 23, he'd launched a software startup with 2 friends in a garage that smelled like gas and determination. That company sold 3 years later for $28 million. That was Marcus Kingsley's first big break, but it wasn't his last. Now, 2 decades later, he was the silent force behind a portfolio of companies that spanned fashion, tech, real estate, and dining. He rarely did interviews. He never chased the spotlight. His face wasn't on magazine covers, but his influence was everywhere. And still, despite all of that, he preferred hoodies over suits, public transit over limousines, corner stores over 5-star boutiques. Not because he couldn't afford better, but because he believed real character was revealed when there were no cameras watching. He had one rule. If you only treat people with respect when you think they're rich or powerful, then you're not respectful. You're strategic. And that's not the same. Marcus had seen too many boardrooms full of men who smiled in his face, but locked their car doors when someone who looked like him walked by. He'd watched the same men donate to charities for the culture while denying promotions to qualified black candidates behind closed doors. That's why he kept his power quiet, hidden, because the world was still playing the same ugly game, and he wanted to see who was playing fair when they thought the referee wasn't watching. That's why, every now and then, he would walk into one of his businesses unannounced. No suit, no appointment, no name drop, just him, to see what happened. And on this particular day, he'd chosen Velvet Garden, one of his newest fine dining ventures. It was supposed to be different, a restaurant where inclusion and luxury could coexist, where wealth didn't mean whiteness, where service meant service, regardless of who walked through the door. But what he found was something else entirely. Daniel, the waiter, wasn't just rude. He was proud to be rude. His voice dripped with the kind of casual arrogance that only comes from years of getting away with it. His laugh wasn't just mocking, it was confident, like he knew no one would challenge him. Marcus had seen his type before. Men like Daniel existed in every upscale place, tucked behind fake smiles and tailored vests. They were the gatekeepers, the silent filter between welcome and go away. And they did their work with 1,000 tiny cuts. A tone, a glance, a smirk, a refusal to check the list. Marcus knew those weapons well. He'd been cut by them before. But today wasn't like the old days. Today, Marcus wasn't just the man being cut. He was the man who owned the blade factory. As he sat in the booth, the smell of rosemary and garlic drifting from the kitchen, Marcus glanced around the room. Some guests were still stealing glances at him, trying to place his face. Others looked away, embarrassed that they had also made assumptions when he walked in. That was always the interesting part. Not just the overt racism, but the passive kind. The way people's posture shifted. The way their eyes judged, and then tried to unjudge when they realized their mistake. Marcus didn't need revenge. He didn't want to humiliate anyone. He just wanted the truth to speak louder than the lie they'd all believed a few minutes ago. He looked down at the menu, then up at the maitre d', who now stood stiffly nearby like a soldier caught sleeping on duty. "I'll start with the mushroom risotto," Marcus said, voice calm. "And a glass of the 2012 Barolo, please." The maitre d' nodded like a student called on in class. "Right away, Mr. Kingsley. And, allow me to say, I deeply apologize for." Marcus raised a hand gently. "Save it for the staff meeting." And then he smiled. Not because he was happy, but because he knew. The real story was just beginning. The risotto arrived hot, aromatic, plated like artwork. The Barolo shimmered deep ruby in crystal glass. Marcus barely touched either. He had something else to digest. From his booth in the corner, he had the perfect vantage point. Full view of the dining floor, the bar, the staff movements. Every interaction played out like theater. But he wasn't watching for drama. He was watching for patterns. Daniel was still working. Somehow, despite the embarrassment, despite the obvious shift in atmosphere, no one had pulled him from the floor. The manager hadn't come out from the back. No apology beyond the maitre d's stammered offering had been made. And that's when the second insult landed. The restaurant wasn't just complicit, it was comfortable with what happened. That realization stung deeper than the first interaction. Marcus reached into his hoodie pocket, pulled out a slim phone, and opened a secure app. He tapped twice. Within seconds, a soft vibration responded. A message appeared on the screen. "Security team A, active and outside." Marcus typed back. "Hold. Eyes on Daniel and upper management. Do not enter unless instructed." He set the phone down and exhaled. Across the room, a woman entered, a striking figure in a cobalt pantsuit, clipboard in hand. The staff straightened slightly when they saw her. Not quite fear. Not quite relief. Something in between. Sasha Monroe, corporate liaison, internal affairs, Marcus's right hand. She moved like she had a purpose and a deadline. With a nod from Marcus, she stepped to the bar, greeted the maitre d' quietly, and asked to speak with the general manager. The hostess froze. I don't think he's here," she stammered. Sasha raised a single brow. "It's 7:45 p.m. on a Friday night." The hostess blinked, unsure what to say. Marcus narrowed his eyes. Of course. The general manager, Craig, had a habit of leaving early and putting the assistant managers in charge, most of whom lacked any spine or sense of leadership. Marcus had flagged that behavior before. But tonight, it wasn't just mismanagement. It was cowardice. Moments later, Sasha approached Marcus's table. "He's not here," she said quietly. Marcus nodded once. "Knew it. And Daniel?" "Still serving," Marcus said. No coaching, no removal, no acknowledgement. Business as usual. Sasha's jaw tightened. "Want me to pull him now?" "Not yet. Let it breathe," Marcus replied. "I want to see who else shows their hand." And almost as if on cue, the next blow came. A couple was being seated across the room. Two young professionals, black, elegant, clearly on a date night. The hostess led them toward a central table, but Daniel swooped in. Marcus's eyes sharpened. Daniel leaned toward the hostess, whispered something with a smirk, and gently redirected her. The couple was quietly led to a small table near the kitchen doors. Cramped. No view. High traffic. A bad table. The man looked confused but didn't protest. The woman's eyes narrowed, but she stayed silent. Marcus felt something rise in his chest, a heat he hadn't felt in years. This wasn't about him anymore. It was systemic, a pattern, a sickness in the bones of a place he'd built to be different. And it had gone unchecked. Marcus tapped his phone again. Proceed. Soft extraction. Room B. 10 seconds later, the kitchen doors opened. Two men in sleek black suits and earpieces walked in, unnoticed by most of the guests. One headed to Daniel's side, whispering something in his ear. Daniel stiffened, turned, and followed without protest. Sasha nodded approvingly. Marcus finished his wine. Daniel sat in a cold, windowless room behind the kitchen, a storage office rarely used. Sasha stood across from him, arms folded. Marcus entered silently behind her. Daniel paled when he saw him. I didn't know, he began. Marcus raised a hand. Stop. Daniel's mouth shut. Tell me, Daniel, Marcus said softly. How long have you worked here? For years, Daniel replied, voice brittle. And in those 4 years, how many people have you redirected to the bad tables? Daniel blinked. I don't know what you mean. Marcus smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. You know exactly what I mean. The ones you didn't see on the reservation list. The ones you sent to the corner, to the shadows, to the exits. How many, Daniel? Silence. How many didn't look like you? Marcus added. Daniel's voice cracked. We have a standard. No, Marcus said. You have a script, and you only perform it for certain people. Sasha stepped forward. There have been complaints. Quiet ones. People didn't want to cause a scene, but they've been adding up. Daniel looked at her, then at Marcus. So what? You're firing me. Marcus stepped closer. No, that's too easy. Daniel's confusion deepened. You're going to learn, Marcus continued, voice calm and cold. Not just about policy, about people. You're going to sit through every workshop, every training, every equity audit. And when we're done, you're going to serve the same couple you just tried to humiliate at their table with a full apology. Daniel's eyes widened. I can't. You will, Sasha said firmly. Marcus added, or you walk out that door and never work in this city again. Believe me, I can make that happen. Daniel sank into the chair. The weight of consequence had finally landed. Back on the floor, the atmosphere shifted again. The young black couple had been reseated in the VIP booth across from Marcus. Wine poured. Chef's tasting menu delivered, compliments of the house. Their confusion melted into curiosity, then cautious gratitude. Daniel, cheeks red and posture stiff, approached moments later with a bottle of vintage Bordeaux and 2 menus in hand. I apologize, he muttered. For earlier. It was unprofessional and unacceptable. The man looked at him, unimpressed. The woman simply said, thank you. Daniel nodded and stepped back. Sasha returned to Marcus's booth. You think he'll change? She asked. Marcus took a slow sip of his wine. I don't know, he replied. But I know everyone here just watched a lesson in real time. And that's how you shift culture. Sasha smiled. Marcus glanced around the room one last time. It was quieter now, not awkward, not uncomfortable. Respectful, reflective. The ripple had started. By morning, the video was everywhere. No, Marcus hadn't posted it. He didn't need to. A guest seated near the back had filmed the moment Daniel was pulled aside by security, captured the uncomfortable hush that swept across the dining floor, and uploaded it with a simple caption. A rude waiter denied service to a black man, then found out who he really was. The internet did the rest. By 9 a.m., the clip had over 2 million views. By noon, bloggers, influencers, and local news outlets had picked it up. Headlines ranged from "Restaurateur teaches racist staff a lesson" to "Man secretly owns restaurant that disrespects him." What happens next is gold. People called it justice. Karma. A mic drop moment. But Marcus didn't celebrate. He wasn't looking for virality. He was looking for change, and that's harder to trend. He sat in his office, walls lined with art from black painters, wood panels warm and smooth under his fingertips. On the desk before him lay the internal files, incident reports, employee evaluations, customer feedback logs. Daniel wasn't the only one. He saw a pattern, not just in Velvet Garden, but in 3 other restaurants under the same parent company. Names popped up more than once, subtle acts of exclusion, favoritism, cultural ignorance masquerading as professional standards. Marcus sighed. The problem wasn't the people. It was the system that trained them, protected them, and then acted shocked when the truth came out. The real journey was just beginning, and it was internal. He called a meeting. No emails. No Zooms. In person. All managers, assistant managers, HR leads, and department heads. One location. One room. No distractions. The room buzzed with awkward energy as 50-some staff members filed in. Some confused, some nervous, a few visibly defensive. Marcus entered last. No suit. No briefcase. Just presence. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't bang the table. He spoke like the floor was listening, not just the people in chairs. You've all seen the video, he began. You've read the headlines. And maybe some of you are angry, at the guest, at the media, at me. He paused, letting the silence settle like dust on a glass table. I'm not here to talk about damage control. I'm here to talk about damage. The kind that's been happening long before any camera started rolling. Murmurs shifted in the room. I built these restaurants on a promise. That luxury wouldn't be a barrier. That respect wasn't reserved for people who looked a certain way, talked a certain way, or had certain last names. He scanned the room, eyes locked. No one looked away. And somewhere along the way, we forgot that. A young assistant manager raised a tentative hand. But Daniel was just one guy. That's not all of us. Marcus nodded slowly. True. But if one guy can make 10 people feel unwelcome, and 10 people don't speak up, and the system allows him to stay, then it becomes all of us. Whether we like it or not. A heavier silence followed. This is not a witch hunt, Marcus continued. This is a reckoning. And if we do it right, it becomes a rebirth. He stepped back. Sasha stepped forward. The changes begin today, she said firmly. Every staff member will undergo updated equity training, not just once, but quarterly. New policies, anonymous feedback lines, leadership assessments tied to cultural competency, not just numbers. A hand shot up from the back. The head chef. That's a lot. It's not more than what we owe, Marcus said. He paused, looked around the room again. Look, I get it. Some of you are uncomfortable. Some of you think this is overkill. But let me ask you this. If you're more uncomfortable with accountability than with discrimination, then what does that say about the culture we've created? No one answered. And that was the answer. The weeks that followed were hard. Staff turnover surged. Some employees left voluntarily, unwilling to face the mirror. Others were let go, quietly and respectfully, when patterns couldn't be ignored. Daniel? He stayed. Not out of pride. Out of need. Marcus had offered him a choice. Walk away unchanged or stay and rebuild. Publicly, painfully, and honestly. Daniel chose the second. He enrolled in every workshop, took a demotion to server trainee, shadowed more experienced staff from different backgrounds. He listened more than he spoke. And slowly, something shifted. He didn't become perfect, but he became aware. And that was the point. Meanwhile, Marcus extended his efforts outward. He launched a mentorship initiative for young Black chefs, servers, and managers, people often overlooked for promotions or passed over for not being a culture fit. He partnered with local nonprofits, brought in speakers, held community dinners where guests paid what they could and no one was turned away. Velvet Garden, once a symbol of exclusion, began to transform. One Friday evening, 6 weeks after the incident, Marcus walked into the restaurant, this time wearing a fitted blazer and no hoodie. He was greeted instantly. No hesitation. No confusion. Mr. Kingsley, welcome back, the new maitre d' said with a genuine smile. Your usual booth? Actually, Marcus said, just a spot at the bar tonight. The bar was half full. A mixture of guests, Black, white, Latino, Asian. Couples, solo diners, groups. Laughter flowed freely. Music swirled soft and jazzy. He took a seat and ordered a drink. A familiar face approached. Daniel. Evening, sir, he said carefully. Would you like to see the wine list, or shall I recommend a pairing? Marcus looked at him for a long second. Recommend. Daniel nodded, not nervous, but grounded, humbled. He returned with a bottle and poured with precision. Petit Verdot, he said. Structured. A little bold, but it settles nicely. Like someone with something to prove, who finally learns how to listen. Marcus smirked. Sounds autobiographical. Daniel gave a faint, respectful grin. Maybe. He poured the glass, stepped back. Marcus took a sip. The wine was rich, smooth, balanced. He turned slightly to watch the room. A group of teens at a nearby table were being served by a Black waiter, who spoke to them like royalty. A white couple at the corner was laughing with a young Dominican bartender. The chef came out to greet a table of elders in wheelchairs. It wasn't perfect, but it was evolving. The culture was learning. Marcus leaned back, the taste of change lingering on his tongue. For the first time in a long time, he allowed himself to feel something close to peace. The smell of fresh rosemary and seared duck drifted through Velvet Garden's kitchen, but in Marcus's office, it was all tension and whispered tones. A folder sat on his desk, thick, worn, and strangely familiar. Sasha had dropped it off earlier that morning with one line written in black ink on a post-it. "You need to see this. Now." Marcus opened it cautiously. Inside were performance records, past incident reports, and hidden in the back, something else, an internal complaint from 3 years ago. Filed. Stamped. Ignored. His eyes scanned the lines. Daniel L. often mocks customers with accents. Has turned away guests for not dressing up to our standard, even when dress code was met. Multiple black and brown patrons have expressed discomfort, but nothing changes. It wasn't just one complaint. It was 5. Across 2 years. Marcus's throat dried. He leaned back, pulse picking up. He hadn't known. Or maybe, he hadn't wanted to know. He flipped to the bottom page, the signature of the last person who'd reviewed the complaints. Amanda Taylor, Director of Guest Relations. She'd worked at the parent company's headquarters. Polished, sharp, always polite. She'd personally assured Marcus, more than once, that the hospitality team was in full alignment with your values. That same Amanda had received these complaints and quietly buried them. His stomach twisted. Suddenly, the incident with Daniel wasn't a crack in the system. It was the tip of something much darker. 2 hours later, Marcus was in a sleek downtown office with glass walls and minimalist furniture. The headquarters. The place where deals were made, investments measured, PR polished. He wasn't there for small talk. Amanda sat across from him, poised, unreadable. "You knew," Marcus said. Not a question. A statement wrapped in quiet fury. Amanda didn't blink. "I processed every report in accordance with company protocol." "You dismissed them." "They were investigated." "Interviews were conducted." "By who?" "His direct supervisor." Marcus leaned in. "You swept it under the rug." Because a waiter with charm and good looks was less trouble than confronting systemic bias. Amanda's voice lowered. "Marcus, you know how these things go. A few guests complain. It doesn't always mean discrimination. Sometimes it's just bad service. Subjective." He slammed the folder on the table. 5 complaints. All from people of color. All within 2 years. That's not subjective. That's a pattern. Amanda's mask cracked for a second. Just a flicker. "Okay," she said. "Yes, maybe we missed something. But look at what you've done now. It's a media circus. Headlines. Protests. Investors calling me asking if we're woke now. If this brand is too political." Marcus sat back, stunned. "Is that what this is to you?" he said softly. "An inconvenience?" Amanda didn't respond. So Marcus stood. Calm. Controlled. "If you're more afraid of backlash from racists than you are of losing integrity," he said, "then you're part of the reason this system keeps failing." He walked out before she could respond. But he didn't walk away. He was going to burn the whole lie down. That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. The truth had hit him like a slap across the face. He'd built a kingdom inside someone else's fortress. And that fortress wasn't his friend. The restaurants might have his name, his recipes, his culture embedded in their menus and designs. But the company that owned them, that funded the operations, that paid Amanda's salary, they didn't share his values. Not really. And if they'd let this rot fester under their nose for years, what else had they buried? He began to dig. Emails, old reports, partnership contracts. And then he found it. A clause in the acquisition agreement from when he'd sold 49% of his brand to the hospitality conglomerate. In the event of gross ethical misconduct, should the board deem necessary, partial ownership may be reassigned without consultation of the minority stakeholder. It was tucked in legal jargon. Easy to miss. Easy to exploit. Marcus felt a chill creep up his spine. They could use the Daniel incident, the very one caused by their own failures, to argue he brought reputational damage to the brand. And then, they could push him out. His own restaurants. His own legacy. Gone. He called Sasha. She arrived within the hour. "You were right," he said quietly. "It runs deeper than we thought." They knew. And now, they might try to bury me to save themselves. Sasha sat silently for a long time. Then, So what are we going to do? He stared at her. And then, an idea. Not a defensive one. An offensive one. The next day, Marcus called a press conference. Not a live stream. Not a tweet. A full room, on-the-record event. Every local journalist showed up. He stepped up to the mic in a navy jacket, no tie. Calm, composed, but with eyes that cut like a blade. I want to talk about truth, he said. Not spin. Not press releases. Just truth. He held up the folder, those same internal complaints. These reports were filed by real people. Guests who deserved better. Staff who tried to speak up. And a system that chose to protect itself instead of them. Cameras clicked. Fingers typed. And while I've been doing the work to rebuild trust inside these walls, he continued, the people who run the wider operation have quietly tried to cover it up. Downplay it. Even prepare to punish me for shining a light. The room buzzed. Let me be clear. I'm not afraid of losing my brand. I'm afraid of losing my soul. And if they want to play hardball, they'll have to do it in full public view. Because I won't go quietly. Reporters surged with questions, but Marcus didn't stay. He turned and walked off stage. Not because he was afraid. Because he knew what was coming next. 3 days later, he received the letter. Notice of reassessment of partnership agreement. Amanda had made her move. They were formally reviewing his status as minority owner. The reason? Conduct resulting in reputational risk. The irony could have filled an ocean. But Marcus didn't blink. He picked up the phone, not to call a lawyer, but to call Delilah Mays, an old mentor, now head of a prominent black investment fund. Within a week, she visited Velvet Garden, tasted the food, toured the staff rooms, spoke with the team, and left with one promise. If they try to squeeze you out, we'll buy you back in. A week after that, Amanda received a letter of her own from Delilah's legal team and a petition from over 30,000 community members, and an article in the New York Times detailing how hospitality racism isn't just microaggressions, it's business decisions. Public pressure mounted. The board panicked. Suddenly, Amanda wasn't so invincible. Then came the twist no one expected. Daniel requested a one-on-one with Marcus. I need to tell you something, he said, hands slightly shaking. They sat in the upstairs office, quiet, removed. I wasn't just rude that day, Daniel confessed. I was coached. Marcus froze. Coached. Daniel nodded, ashamed. Back when Amanda visited, months before the incident, she told us, off the record, to keep an eye out for certain guests. Said the company was trying to reposition the brand toward a more premium demographic. Her words. Marcus's eyes narrowed. What demographic? Daniel swallowed. She didn't say it directly, but it was clear. Wealthy, white, clean-cut, old money vibes. That's what she said. A chill ran through Marcus's bones. She told us to discourage anyone who didn't fit that. And you went along with it, Marcus said flatly. I was weak, Daniel said. I thought it would help me move up. The silence between them grew thick. Finally, Marcus spoke. You just gave me everything I need. Daniel frowned. What do you mean? I mean, Marcus said, rising, we're going to expose them. For real. The walls of Marcus's world were closing in. And yet, something within him had opened up. He stood at a crossroads. One path. Go public with everything. The folder. Amanda. The coded racism. The corporate rot. Tell the truth. Loud and clear. The other? Accept a private settlement. Walk away quietly. Keep his reputation. Save his restaurants. But let the real villains slink away untouched. Delilah's team had secured a powerful deal on the table. $5 million from a rival hospitality group if Marcus agreed to resign from Velvet Garden and sign an NDA. He could take the money, start over, and leave the war behind. But that meant letting Amanda, the board, and the entire corrupt hierarchy stay in place. The restaurants might carry his recipes, but they'd never carry his integrity. And worst of all, Daniel, though now remorseful, would be protected too. They could spin his confession, make him look like a misguided employee rather than the symptom of a much bigger sickness. Marcus stared at the papers on his desk. 2 envelopes. One red, one white. The red held the legal agreement to walk away. It would guarantee peace. The white held the written transcript of Daniel's confession. It would guarantee war. He stared at them for what felt like hours. His heartbeat echoed in the silence. The next morning, he met with Delilah again. I'm leaning toward burning it all down, he said. But I'd lose everything. Delilah raised an eyebrow. Or maybe you'd finally win. She reached into her briefcase and pulled out a slim black folder. "These are your options," she said. "If you expose them, we can push for a full buyout. Public support is strong. Investors are nervous. The board is vulnerable. But if it gets messy, you might lose public favor. They'll dig into your past. Try to smear you. It won't be easy." He nodded slowly. Delilah leaned in. "But Marcus, if you walk away now, someone else will walk into that same system. And they'll suffer in silence, just like the others." He didn't speak, but his silence was full of fire. That night, Marcus returned to Velvet Garden. The restaurant had reopened, under tight media scrutiny. Inside, the mood was hushed. Every guest knew the story by now. Every server walked like they were balancing on a blade. Daniel approached Marcus near the back hallway. "You said we were going to expose them. What do you need from me?" Marcus looked at him carefully. "Everything." Daniel blinked. "Everything. Emails. Memos. Anytime Amanda or a manager gave you those instructions. And a public apology, no legal shield." Daniel hesitated. "That'll destroy my career." Marcus didn't blink. "Mine's already on the line." A beat passed. Then Daniel nodded. "Okay, I deserve it." The next day, Marcus released a statement. Not through PR. Not through a media outlet. He uploaded a raw video. No edits. No music. Just truth. "I had a choice," he said, looking straight into the camera. "Stay quiet and keep my success, or speak up and risk it all." He paused. "I'm choosing the second." He held up the white envelope. This is Daniel's confession. He names names, shares dates. He explains how racism wasn't just a bug in the system. It was part of the system. He put the envelope down. "And if you're watching this thinking, what does a fancy restaurant scandal have to do with me? I'll tell you, everything. Because if discrimination can hide in places like this, places dressed up in candles and jazz, then it can hide anywhere." He ended the video with one final line. "This isn't about a rude waiter. This is about the silence that lets people like him flourish. And that silence ends with me." The video went viral within hours. Within days, the consequences arrived. The parent company's stock plummeted. Multiple high-profile chefs pulled out of partnerships. Former employees began sharing stories: quiet discrimination, double standards, subtle exclusion. Amanda resigned in disgrace. But it came at a price. Marcus received hate mail, death threats. Sponsors pulled out. He was called divisive, a race baiter, ungrateful. His team shrank. Investors grew cold. Velvet Garden's future became unstable. Then came the hardest moment. His board, under pressure from shareholders, called an emergency vote. They were moving to dissolve his ownership. Delilah fought back fiercely, with lawyers and media and community leaders behind her. But the numbers were close. Too close. Marcus was asked to attend the final board meeting via video call. As he stared at the gallery of faces, suits, polished smiles, nervous eyes, he felt something rise in him. Not fear. Not rage. Conviction. "I didn't start Velvet Garden to make rich people feel fancy," he said into the camera. "I built it for my grandmother. For the kid who looks like me and dreams of being more than what the world expects. And if that makes me a problem to you, so be it." Silence. Then one voice, a woman on the board, cleared her throat. "I vote to retain Marcus King's ownership and open an independent investigation." Another voice echoed. And another. The tide turned. The motion to dissolve his ownership? Defeated. After the call, Marcus sat alone in his office. It was quiet. Peaceful. But it wasn't over. Not yet. The next morning, a young black couple walked into Velvet Garden for brunch. Casual, warm, excited. Daniel, wearing a crisp white apron and no longer afraid of facing the world, greeted them with a humble smile. "Welcome," he said. "It's good to see you here." Marcus watched from the balcony. They didn't know the war that had just been fought for that moment. But he did. And that was enough. The storm had passed. But its eye? Still watching. Marcus had won the vote. He kept his ownership. Amanda was gone. Daniel confessed. The media had crowned him a symbol of resilience, justice, and change. But deep down, he knew it wasn't over. Because the system never folds in a single strike. It regroups. It retaliates. And that retaliation was about to come. Hard. 2 weeks later, Marcus sat in his favorite booth at Velvet Garden. The city skyline stretched behind him, glowing like a promise. But his eyes were heavy. Delilah had just left him a voicemail, urgent, cryptic. He played it again. "Marcus, I need you to call me the second you get this." Something's happening behind the scenes. Someone powerful is trying to buy controlling shares, quietly. They're calling it Project Eclipse. I don't like it. Call me. He didn't call. He knew what it meant. Someone wanted him out, for good. That night, as the last guests filtered out, Daniel approached him with a strange look. There's a man. Been showing up during lunch. Never eats. Just sits there. Watches the staff. I asked if I could help him today. He just smiled and said, not yet. Marcus stiffened. What did he look like? Expensive. Gray suit. Shiny shoes. Snake eyes. Marcus's stomach turned. He knew who that was. He'd heard whispers of him in boardroom gossip. A private equity predator. A fixer for the company's darkest ambitions. They called him Morris Wolf, the man who made inconvenient founders disappear. The next day, Morris Wolf introduced himself over espresso. They sat across from each other in Marcus's office. No handshake, just cold calculation. Let's not waste time, Wolf began. We're offering $10 million. Full buyout. You walk away with your name intact. We rebrand the restaurant, shift the narrative, and this whole mess disappears. Marcus didn't blink. That's not happening. Wolf smiled like a wolf. It already is. He slid a manila envelope across the desk. Marcus opened it. Photos. Old ones. Grainy. Some from his teenage years. One showed him at a protest, fist raised, eyes on fire. Another was taken outside a party where a brawl had broken out. He hadn't even been involved. Then came the forged ones. Him photoshopped beside controversial figures. A woman crying in a hallway. A check with his forged signature on it. Marcus's blood turned to ice. You're bluffing, he said. Wolf shrugged. Does it matter? Headlines don't care what's real. They care what's clickable. He leaned forward. Walk away, Marcus, or I burn you. The next 48 hours were a nightmare. A social media storm hit him like a tidal wave. New allegations against celebrity chef Marcus King. Is the Velvet Garden founder hiding a dark past? Former employees speak out. Toxic work environment. Except the former employees didn't exist. Fake names. Fake quotes. Fake stories. Anonymous blogs. Shadow accounts. Bot armies. He was being digitally assassinated. Delilah called in a panic. This is scorched earth warfare, Marcus. They want to destroy your credibility. I know, he said. And it's working. Sponsors are pulling out. The reservation list dropped 40% overnight. We need to hit back. With what? She paused, then said, the truth. They decided to go live again. But this time, it would be different. Bigger. Not just a statement. A full documentary-style expose. They brought in a filmmaker friend. Gathered testimonials. Daniel agreed to go on camera. So did several employees of color who'd faced subtle discrimination under Amanda's management. Marcus sat for a 3-hour interview. Raw. Honest. Emotional. He spoke about the sabotage. The fake stories. The shadow campaign against him. He ended the video with one powerful line. You don't silence truth by yelling louder. You just show how scared you are of it. The video dropped on a Monday morning. It broke the internet by noon. But Wolf wasn't done. That evening, a fire broke out. Velvet Garden's second location, the one in Chicago, was reduced to ash. The fire department called it electrical. Marcus didn't believe that for a second. The timing was too perfect. And a note was found in the rubble. For words, typed in courier font. Next time it's you. Delilah filed a formal complaint with the SEC. Whistleblower protection laws. Investor manipulation. Corporate intimidation. It was now a legal battle. And a personal one. Marcus hired private security. He slept with his phone under his pillow. Every knock on the door made his pulse spike. But through it all, he never closed the restaurant. Not once. Because if he did, they'd win. Then came the final strike. Wolf called a secret emergency vote to remove Marcus as CEO based on new revelations of misconduct. They forged documents, faked testimony, and used Marcus's own past, edited, twisted, as the nail in the coffin. The board was split. The vote would happen in 72 hours. Delilah looked him in the eye. If you lose this, you're out. He nodded. I won't lose. 3 days later, the boardroom was tense. Faces grim. Wolf stood at the front like a vulture in a $10,000 suit. Ladies and gentlemen, he said smoothly, Marcus King is a liability. His continued presence is toxic to this brand. I move to dissolve his executive privileges and install interim leadership. He sat down. The room was silent. Marcus stood. No papers. No speech. Just presence. You all saw what they tried to do to me, what they are doing. And if you reward that with obedience, then you're no better than them. He turned to Wolf. I'd rather go down swinging than bow to a snake. He sat. The vote began. One by one, hands were raised. At first, it was grim. 4 votes for Wolf. 3 for Marcus. Then came the 8th hand. Wavered. Then went to Marcus. 4-4. Final vote. Chairwoman Linda Rainey. An older woman. Quiet. Often neutral. All eyes turned to her. She looked at Wolf. Then at Marcus. Then said, I vote to retain Marcus King as CEO. And I motion for a federal investigation into this attempted hostile takeover. Silence. Then Wolf stood. Without a word, he walked out. He never returned. The aftermath was chaos. Federal agents showed up at Wolf's holding company. Amanda was subpoenaed. An independent audit revealed a shadow operation targeting multiple BIPOC-owned businesses across the country. Marcus's story wasn't the first, but it would be the last they tried, because the empire they'd built on threats and lies collapsed. Months later, Marcus stood on stage at an awards ceremony. He wasn't there for fame or recognition. He was there for truth. He looked out at the crowd, chefs, activists, entrepreneurs, dreamers, and he said, this fight wasn't about food. It wasn't even about racism. It was about power. Who has it? Who keeps it? And who dares to stand up when it's used like a weapon? He raised his trophy. Not high, just enough. You can burn down a building, but you can't burn down a voice that refuses to shut up. Later that night, he walked into Velvet Garden's kitchen. Staff were laughing. Daniel was plating a dessert. Jazz played low in the background. Marcus smiled, because after all the smoke, fire, and blood, he was still standing. The night was quiet again. No fire, no threats, just the steady hum of kitchen fans, the soft clinking of glasses, and laughter that sounded like healing. Marcus stood alone on the rooftop garden above Velvet Garden. The city stretched beneath him, no longer a battlefield, but a home again. He closed his eyes, breathed deep. It was over. At least, this chapter was. 6 months had passed since the boardroom showdown. The investigations into Wolf's firm had led to multiple arrests. Amanda fled the country. Her assets were frozen. Anonymous tips started pouring in. He wasn't her only target. Dozens of Black-owned businesses had similar stories. Sabotage, smears, strategic takeovers. But now, they were uniting. Marcus had helped start a new coalition, Restoration Table, dedicated to protecting minority-owned brands from systemic abuse. A legal fund. A network of allies. A spotlight on those silenced for too long. The very thing meant to crush him had become his cause. The restaurant was thriving again. Reservations were full 6 weeks out. Critics had returned, reluctantly at first, then with full hearts. One review read, Velvet Garden is no longer just a restaurant. It's a revolution in 5 courses. And yet, Marcus had changed. He no longer spent all day in the kitchen. He no longer micromanaged every garnish or flavor. He let others lead, especially Daniel. Daniel had grown into more than a sous chef. He was now head of the new branch in Oakland, a space specifically designed to nurture rising Black chefs. A culinary academy by day, fine dining by night. Marcus had given him the keys without hesitation. You believed in me, Daniel had said, tearing up. And now it's my turn to believe in others. Delilah had joined Restoration Table full-time. She'd gone from PR manager to activist organizer, working with lawyers and journalists. She even started writing a book. Marcus skimmed the manuscript one night. The title made him pause. Velvet Revolution, the day they couldn't silence him. He smiled. He hadn't realized he was becoming a symbol. He never asked to be one. But maybe that's how it always happens. One chilly autumn evening, Marcus hosted a private dinner at the restaurant. No press, no awards. Just a table of 10 friends, family, and community members who had stood by him. The final course came out, a chocolate tart with saffron and sea salt. The very dessert Amanda had once tried to steal from Daniel. Everyone took a bite, chewed, paused, then erupted in applause. Daniel beamed. Marcus raised his glass. To truth, he said. To standing your ground, even when it shakes beneath you. They drank, laughed, loved. After the guests left, Marcus sat at the bar. A woman approached. Elderly, sharp eyes, dignified posture. She'd come in quietly during dessert, observed everything, and waited until the end. She slid an envelope onto the bar. Marcus raised an eyebrow. What's this? She smiled gently. A thank you. From someone who once watched her brother lose everything to men like Wolf. He opened the envelope. Inside was a single photo. His restaurant, on opening night, years ago. But something was different. At the very edge of the photo, barely visible, was a tall black man standing beside a child. Smiling proudly, Marcus turned it over. Written in elegant handwriting. My brother. And me. We saw you once. He said, that man's gonna change the game. And you did. Thank you. No name. No contact. Just that. Marcus stared at the photo for a long time, then tucked it into his wallet. Sometimes, you win by surviving. Other times, you win by transforming. Marcus had done both. Not just for himself, but for everyone watching, every overlooked voice, every underestimated dreamer, every black boy taught to shrink himself to survive. He hadn't just held the line. He'd pushed it forward. He stepped outside. The night breeze wrapped around him. From the alley across the street, an older man emerged. A regular who always tipped well and kept to himself. He walked up to Marcus, nodded, and said quietly, You didn't just build a restaurant, son. You built a place where we finally feel seen. Then he turned and walked away. Marcus watched until he disappeared around the corner. He didn't cry, but something deep in his chest cracked open, like sunlight through clouds. Inside, Daniel was locking up. You good, boss? He asked. Marcus shook his head. I'm not the boss anymore, he said, smiling. I'm just the guy who had a fire lit under him and finally used it to cook something real. They both laughed, then walked out together into the night. The city shimmered, not with fame, not with danger, but with quiet, radical hope. Marcus didn't know what would come next, but for once, he didn't need to. He had his voice. He had his place. He had his truth. And they couldn't take that from him ever again.